M&T Bank presents Montgomery Community Media's Small Business Network. SBN is also sponsored by Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and Leadership Montgomery.
Hello and welcome to Montgomery Community Media's Small Business Network at Home edition. I'm your host, Kelly Leonard. Thank you for tuning in with us today. Joining me online for part one of a two-part discussion on small businesses' road to economic recovery are Marilyn Balcombe and Georgette, Gigi Godwin. Marilyn is president and CEO of the Gaithersburg-Germantown Chamber of Commerce, while Gigi serves as president and CEO of Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great, doing great.
Thanks for having us, Kelly.
Oh, no, my pleasure. And I know we have so much ground to cover, so I'm going to jump right into this conversation. You know, it's interesting, as I was thinking about the conversation with you all, it dawned on me, hey, the chambers are essentially small businesses in themselves. And so I'm just wondering, for each of you, how are your organizations doing, you know, considering the COVID crisis, and how have you each pivoted from business as usual? Marilyn, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for acknowledging that. You know, we are a small business, and just like our members, we have to deal with the same things that our members do. Revenue that's greatly constrained. The uncertainty, I think it's the uncertainty that really has everybody concerned about what's going to happen in the future. But pivoting, everything's online, so people know us by our networking events, and we're the chamber. We do great things, and we love to be out in the public, and we love people to be interacting and networking. But we did a major pivot, and we're doing that online, and we seem to be doing fine. We probably do 2 or 3 events a month online. But the biggest pivot is being involved in the restructuring, reopening, getting funding out to our members. And I think that's really where we've come into our own.
Awesome. How about you, Gigi?
Well, I would say all of the above, and I would just add to it. I mean, the reason for all of that is that commerce doesn't stop because there's a global pandemic. Mm-hmm. You know, Marilyn, Marilyn's organization, our organization, and others like us, you know, had to pivot. We had to basically innovate, adapt, overcome in a hurry. And because our companies still need the same thing, and now they need even more of it. They look to us as trusted sources for information, for the right relationships, so that they can move forward. I would say our businesses overall are optimistic, and even the ones that are under the greatest stress and are worried if they're going to make it through this. You know, business people are optimistic. They believe in the possibilities, and they associate with us collectively because they believe we're going to help them get where they want to go, and frankly, to accelerate that success. During this situation, it's been another layer, this layer of access to all these programs. I know Marilyn has been really deeply engaged in that, as have I, and as all of us in chambers have been, trying to help connect our companies and help them navigate through all the PPE programs, that sort of thing. So there's been that. There have been a lot of opportunities for that, but I think the biggest thing is the pivoting that Marilyn described. We did the same thing. And I think that's been not only good and important, but frankly, I think in some ways we needed to start pivoting in that direction, because some of the, you know, we love to be out there. I agree with that. I'm a totally press the flesh personality. I like to be out, I like to be seeing people, hugging them and everything else. But this virtual world has given us an opportunity to do things we actually couldn't do. There are speakers that we've been able to access that are all over the country. Yeah. And so what was impossible is now possible. And so I would say we did a national conference. We do one every year. Senator Van Hollen is our honorary chair. And we had people from all over the country. And instead of a one-day in-person event, we did it over a week, 4 days. It was virtual. The expo was up for a week. You can't do that in person. So, and Marilyn's done things that you know, she wouldn't have been able to do in person too, just like we have. So there's some things that I think we're forced to you know, do, or had an opportunity to embrace, that may alter forever, or at least be continue on even when we get back into person. I think I can imagine a future of more hybrid events.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Gigi, or many great points. And I love the fact that, folks are leaning into this optimism because, unfortunately, we don't have much of a choice, right? And so, I appreciate you reflecting on the things that we can do and looking at sort of what is the glass half full in all of this. And yes, it's this, we are able to leverage the technology and build these new muscles that are helping us to grow in new and different ways. On the flip side of that, I'd be curious to know from each of you, what are, the members that you serve, are you hearing recurring themes around the challenges that they're having with the COVID crisis? I would love to hear from both of you on those things that you're hearing, how they're struggling in certain areas.
Marilyn, why don't you?
Sure. I think the biggest struggle, of course, is revenue. But it's not universal. There are some of our members who haven't skipped a beat. They've continued to provide their goods and services, and their revenue hasn't changed. And so there are people out there. There are some of our members who have increase their revenue. Our IT folks have been going gangbusters. Their services have been in high demand. But then there are a lot of people who, of course, our restaurants, our retailers, our B2C businesses have suffered, and the biggest concern is cash in the door and keeping their staffs intact. So that's the issue of, for a lot of businesses, personnel, payroll is their biggest expense. And so when companies have to look to cut expenses, they're cutting staff, and that's impacting people's lives. And for small businesses, we know our employees, we know their lives, we know their families, and it's very disheartening for a small business owner to have to lay off staff. So that's been very difficult. And as always with entrepreneurs and business owners, they're not getting paid. They're not taking money out of their business. So that's difficult. And of course, as I mentioned before, the uncertainty. We don't know when this is going to end. We don't know when cash is going to start coming in the door.
Well, just to add on, I mean, yes to everything Marilyn said. And I would say that that's really a good setup for a tale of two economies. Montgomery County is blessed to be number 2 in the nation for counties that have small businesses that sell to the federal government. And we're number 1 in the nation for small business health IT firms. And according to Bloomberg Government, our chamber partners with Bloomberg Government on to have data and that sort of thing to help inform programs and help for our government contracting community. We have $10 billion in revenue that comes to our county, to those businesses. So we are deeply invested. I mean, that's our reality here. And the good thing about that is that those companies, for the most part, as Marilyn was saying, are just chugging along. The federal government is the biggest spender on the planet Earth, and they spend a lot of it here. So we have that cushion. So we have, and it's a knowledge economy. Those jobs tend to be the IT. Those are the people building blockchain technology for HHS. HHS is our Pentagon here in Montgomery County. So they have the Pentagon, the weapons Pentagons across the way, but we've got plenty of companies in defense contracting. Also, obviously, the biggest one being in our county, Lockheed Martin, but there are lots of small businesses that support that. So we have that side of the story, but then as Marilyn mentioned, we have hospitality and we have retail. We have Main Street America is getting clobbered. No getting around that one, right? And it's so unfair because one of the biggest problems they have, and Marilyn and I are both involved in this advocacy, which is that these small businesses in the state of Maryland, and this is true in the other 50 states too, but they're going to have these lingering expenses of unemployment insurance rates going up unfairly. They were forced to close. And then they're forced to lay people off, and then they're going to get dinged forever, clobbered, forever in these rates. So we and our good colleagues are advocating at the state level. It's a state problem, but it's not unique to Maryland, but it's definitely an issue here. It's if you imagined a stool. You know, a lot of our elected officials, we got briefed yesterday on, you know, state revenues and county revenues, and the money's coming in, and it's not as bad as they thought it was going to be, but, you know, it was a little down. Well, that's because they're looking at the total revenue. But if you disaggregate the data and you look to see, well, who's doing really well, as Marilyn was saying, some companies are record profits, never did better, right? But it's like looking at a stool saying everything's great because we're only about 25% down. Well, if a stool has 4 legs, that 25% is an entire leg, and that would be hospitality. That would be retail. That would be all those cute little shops that make a community have, you know, texture and life. And they're just, it's frustrating. And it's a global pandemic. We're not alone. This is happening. It doesn't matter where in the globe you point to, it's happening. But I'm deeply concerned about those companies because they're part of the texture. You know, they make a community be what it is, and they're struggling mightily. And the other thing that Marilyn mentioned is, you know, the help that came at the county and state and federal level. Very few elected officials thought in March, April, May, when they were passing these things, that in November, as we're approaching Thanksgiving and you know, December holidays, that we would still be, not only would we still be in this, but it would be getting more complicated. Now, I mean, the good news is some huge vaccine progress is made, but we're a long way from distribution and stabs in people's arms. I mean, we got a ways to go on that one. Anyway, so it's so unfair to see sometimes the, you know, big stores are open because they're essential, but little stores sell the same stuff and they have fewer people in it. I've always felt it was so unfair that they couldn't be open. I will just tell you that. Yeah. You know, as a consumer, as a resident, it's been very frustrating. What do you think, Marilyn?
Yeah, same thing. We've been advocating for getting people for getting the smaller shops open, and now we're in our second wave, and the uncertainty's back. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about the different aid packages and grants that have been created to support and sustain small business. But before we get off the topic of sort of crisis and themes, I'd be curious to hear from each of you, because one of the things that I hear from my peers in the small business world is the challenge of these dual hats. Like, an entrepreneur by nature already wears a bunch of different hats, right? But now when you add and now I'm my child's educator, and I don't have childcare, and so I'd be curious to know or to hear from you all. Are you hearing much from your members around the challenges of sort of the balance of the business and then being my child's educator, the fact that I perhaps don't have access to childcare, and so that's distracting my efforts in working from home and things like that?
Definitely. Marilyn, why don't you take it first and then I'll chime in.
Yeah, I think it's as you mentioned, Kelly, entrepreneurs have always had to deal with work-life balance, right? Because it's your business and you have to do everything you can to make it succeed. And now with kids at home, not only toddlers, but school-age kids and educating them at home, it's a real struggle for working parents. And if anything, it's highlighted the importance of early care and education. And both Gigi and I work with Montgomery Moving Forward to really try to solve the county's lack of a comprehensive early care and education program. And this pandemic has really highlighted that. Gigi, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
I would say that the gender inequity piece about who had to take care of kids and whose career gets clobbered and who has to take a backseat, and why is it still that women who are not a minority are still not making dollar for dollar what men are making? Okay, maybe we're not advocating directly on that topic, you know, as a chamber issue. But this is an underlying inequity that has gone on. And guess what? With a global pandemic and so many women in the workforce who are supporting the mission of companies are looking at this and realizing we just can't turn a blind eye to this topic. Yeah. This is an inconvenient truth we're going to have to deal with. And I'm really proud to say that the chambers in this county, and Marilyn has been such a leader on this, and we are right there with her, is that access to early childhood education is not only important for growing the next generation of talent, but it is critical to have access to that so that women and men, and there are plenty of men involved in raising their children, more so today, I think, than in decades past, but moving in the right direction. And it's a huge issue. It's a huge income inequity issue, huge. It's a huge issue across all the equity categories. I mean, everything you would want to address. And we just can't say, we just can't turn a blind eye to it. And it's a huge economic issue. And finally, people are talking about it. And I'm glad to say that we were, I do think, Marilyn, with moving Montgomery forward, that we were ahead of a lot of places. And I would say, I don't think a lot of chambers nationally have grabbed onto this the way they should. But I'm proud to say that, you know, we as colleagues, we're ahead on it.
Awesome. And so let's pivot to aid. Like, what programs are out there that you have found have been the most beneficial to support your members? And so, two-part question, if you had a magical wand, like, what program do you think needs to be created in order to help move us along on this road to recovery? Marilyn, do you want to take it first?
Sure. I think the biggest support has been the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. And the reason, because it's the largest, 2.5 times, 2.5 months worth of payroll. Most companies were eligible. Unfortunately, a terrible little secret, the chambers are not eligible to get that money, but most all of our members have been. And so that money came early, and it was big money, right? And so that was the critical point. But as Gigi said earlier, back in April, when our legislators came up with this, when SBA came up with this program, who would have thought that we would be in it 8 months and counting, right? Because the aid was 2.5 months of salary. So we need another program. We need more PPP. So that needs to happen. But then the county and the state came along, and they had great packages. Unfortunately, not nearly enough money. The money went both in the county and the state. The state closed down their program in 2 days, and the county spent their money very quickly. There is money out there right now for a brand new grant for dentists and healthcare professionals. That's a new program. Tourism program that just came out last week. So there are some new programs, small, but good. My magic wand, you know, I think that we do need the PPP needs to come through again, a program like that. And then I know that the county has this, and of course the chambers have it, but we need hand-holding, right? Some of our small businesses need a consulting, mentoring relationship to help get them through this. I have members call me all the time to say, what can I do? How can I save my business? The rent, you know, the whole issue of rent for businesses, you know, that's a really tricky one, because we have landlords, our businesses, they rely on that money. That's their revenue stream. So they're complex issues, and we need to look at these complex issues on all sides. So we're not going to be able to get out of this without additional federal funding. I don't see it. Now, I do believe that 5 years from now, we'll be cranking it, but how do we get there from here? I think that we'll have a slow recovery, but I feel confident that as Gigi mentioned earlier, we are blessed to be in this region. So I don't have any doubts that we will come back stronger than ever. But we will need federal dollars to help get us through this.
I agree with Marilyn. Again, I agree. I do believe that we will come out strong. And I don't even know if it'll be 5 years. Because we have a big chunk of our economy is, as you mentioned, humming along, record profits. It's almost embarrassing for them, really. on the subject of who can help our companies, well, the big thing is I agree that it's got to be federal funding. I mean, and it's just, you know, we are looking at a potential government shutdown in December, which nobody wants to talk about yet. But, you know, we have a couple of inconvenient issues around that. And that would not be good for us. We do think that we'd be able to navigate through it, but we all know what it looks like to have a government shutdown, a federal shutdown. And if that had to last through January 20th, that wouldn't be so swell. But the rest of the country would be clobbered too, and possibly even worse than we are, believe it or not. So not good. But let's set that aside. I believe that we need more federal funding. The counties and the states really can't do it. They don't have, even if you use all of the governor's rainy day fund, there's been a lot of talk about some of it. And do we need all of it, as a tourniquet, that kind of thing. But states and counties really don't have the coffers, and they can't print money. The federal government can print money. They got a printer right under their desk, right? And we don't. So I don't see any way around it. I agree that was the most effective money. It got out, it got to lots of people. It was a chunk. So it wasn't, a little bit here and there for, to buy masks, which is helpful, but it's not nearly enough. One of our members was explaining in a recent hearing that, 5,000 or 10,000 from the county or the state is certainly helpful, but when their monthly lease is 20,000, and there's no revenue coming in, I mean, you have to have a little self-awareness. That's helpful.
Yeah.
And it's appreciated. It is not a solution. We're going to need a big old tranche of federal money. And this is, quite apart from anybody's politics. It's just that that's the only source, really. Mm-hmm. And these businesses, these are businesses that are in trouble through no mismanagement or no fault, or not even, it wasn't the marketplace that threw them off. It was a global pandemic and government directions to close down. I mean, and so I don't know any other way, because the goal is to keep people paid. That's why paycheck protection was really the right thing to call it. We're trying to keep people, because our country depends on consumer spending.
Yeah. Right.
That didn't change somehow. It's still true. And so if people don't have paychecks, they're not doing consumer spending. Anyway, I think it's a federal issue. The problem there is that even if Congress produces it, can you get it signed into law? That's a big old question mark right now. So that's really, everybody's kind of walking around that big elephant in the room, but that would be the big topic. And we're 20 minutes, from Capitol Hill. So we're painfully aware of what's going on in what is our backyard, right? So
yeah,
national, right? Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. So I'm curious, why weren't the chambers permitted to apply for PPP?
Yeah, so we're 501c6s.
Okay.
So,
we weren't prohibited, we were just excluded. I mean, I would say that, right? And Senator Cardin was working really hard, right, Marilyn? I mean, he was, because he's on the Small Business Committee, he was trying to get us in, but
yeah, and the problem is, our tax status is the same as the NRA, the NFL.
Gotcha.
And so we're lumped into huge, massive associations.
I see.
And so it's been in as Gigi said, our congressional delegation has been working hard. And we don't know if it's gonna pay off in the next go round.
Gotcha. I'm curious, have you all seen any new industries or ideas be birthed out of members as a result of what we've been experiencing?
I think the technology, this Zoom technology, the networking business, a lot of small groups have been formed. Some of my members are using this platform as lost leaders. I've got a guy, Gigi, you were on last week. He's doing monthly networking, and he's getting 150 people. It's not what he does. He does credit card processing, but he's got a platform that every month 150 people are tuning in, and he gets mic time, and so it's great. So I think that people have been able to use this platform as a good marketing tool.
Gigi, what about you? Have you
Yeah,
seen
I think people are, they're recognizing crazy things like, oh my gosh, my desktop didn't have a camera on it. I mean, I hate to tell you, but it's like some of the basics, which, oh, by the way, happened to me. I had the oldest desktop in the office because there were other members of the team that needed stronger computers. And what do? I do emails. Like, I wasn't doing like big, complicated, graphics programs or something. So like, not so important. And if I have to get on FaceTime, I'll just do it on my cell phone. Oh no, that stopped working second week of March, right? That was, so everybody had to get more capable. I do think that the big topic, and we kind of touched on it a while ago, but when Marilyn was mentioning the problem with having to pay make your lease payments, rental payments when you're a business, which goes for the chambers too, or anybody else, is that, people are relooking at, how they use space and how they do all kinds of physical in-person things. I frankly think it's good to be washing your hands all the time. I mean, I've always been that person because I was always in contact with a lot of people and I travel a lot. So does Marilyn. So, I mean, I don't think we're different people. If I'm traveling around the country or the world, I'm washing my hands and being careful about germs. So I'm always aware of that sort of thing. And you don't want to be the person that gave everybody the flu or even the common cold, right? So it's like no news there. We've had a hand sanitizer for our meetings since I can't even remember before not having one. But, putting better systems in place. I think the whole idea about I think a lot of people thought present in the office, present equaled productive. I think that's been blown up. No more of that. People recognize that present isn't productive. Yeah. And the other thing you find out is who's got the capability to adapt. And who's stuck in their ways and it's like, I'm not learning that. It's like, well, then you're not long for this world because you've got to, that's what Darwin said. He said it wasn't the biggest, the strongest, or the smartest. It was the most adaptable. By golly, we're having a Darwinian moment right now, I think. Now, not everybody is not adapting and therefore not doing well because sometimes there are things that the line of work you're in is just in trouble, but I think it's temporary. And the question is, how do you help people get through it? But I do think how we think about work hours. I mean, I never was in a job that was 9 to 5 ever in my life. So I'm used to not having boundaries there. So this job wasn't such a big shock. And this transition wasn't that hard to make. I was kind of shocked at how it wasn't that hard. It's gathering people, but we're doing it online. We're doing the best we can. Yeah. I think that there are some things that will continue on. I think the flexibility around the work schedule, at least for our team, that's going to change. Yeah. I think our companies are seeing the same thing. I think the flexibility part stays. I know everybody's hoping kids will go back to school in someday in the future. Yeah. I don't think everybody wants to be some people love homeschooling, but not everybody. It's not working for everybody. So I don't know I think that's going to be something people hope they ratchet through and then get on beyond that point. Yeah. I think higher ed is going to have like some real reckoning to do. And Marilyn and I both work closely with Montgomery College and universities at Shady Grove and Hopkins and all of those folks. Like, how are they going to, I think they need to rethink their bricks and mortar, business model. Yeah. So I think there's that. I just think, we're going to see I think some things will be forever changed, but I think we will go back to using space too, because people want to congregate. That's why we continue to have spread of this disease, because nobody wants to stay home. Yeah.
Some people don't adapt. Some people haven't adapted, and they need the supervision. They need to be in the office, but it's a great social experiment, and we will be forever changed.
Absolutely, we will. And so, ladies, I just want to thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you, both Marilyn and Gigi. I know you're extremely busy, so thank you for carving out time for our Small Business Network community. And thank everyone for tuning in online. On behalf of the entire Small Business Network team, our partners, and our sponsors, we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks so much. Be well.